If there's a comment I hear an awful lot of these days, not just in the comment section of my YouTube channels, but also from people in general, is why is there so many SUVs and crossovers being brought out? It's a comment I hear an awful lot, you know, oh, not another big electric SUV, oh, blah, 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 blah. But here's the thing, the simple fact of the matter is, manufacturers are only building what we are buying. You know, if we weren't so hell-bent on buying these big crossovers and SUVs, they wouldn't be making them. And of course it's the crossovers slash SUV that can in some respects be attributed to sort of like the death of the medium-sized family car, if you like. You know, there's no more Formula 1 Mondeo, for instance, but Ford offer two medium-sized crossovers with the Mustang Mach-E and of course the Explorer and the Kuga and things like that, you see. It's the same with Vauxhall. You can't buy a new Insignia, but you can buy a Grandland. You see what I mean? And people want them, and that's why people are buying them. And it wasn't just the saloons and the hatches that seemed to get killed off, it was the estate car. Now the estate car is an immensely practical car if you're a family person, like me. You can just pile all your stuff in it, get your kids in it, get your dogs in it, get your bikes on it. It's a brilliant car. And here's the thing, they're making a bit of a comeback, especially in the EV world. We've already had the brilliant MG5 that sort of started it all. Porsche offer two, if you count the Sport Turismo and the Cross Turismo as two separate cars. You know, BMW, they've got the brilliant i5 Touring, Vauxhall, the Astra Sports Tourer, Peugeot, the E308 SW, and of course Audi are getting back in on the act as well with their new A6 Avant e-tron. And now there's another one. And this is it. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the Volkswagen ID.7 Tourer, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before I get started on this week's road test review of Volkswagen's ID.7 Tourer, you've guessed it, it's the time where I ask you to make sure that you're subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way you'll be notified when our next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you've watched the review, if you enjoy it, and I sincerely hope you do, then of course don't forget, give it a little thumbs up. And of course as well, remember, put your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let us know what you think about the cars that we feature on the channel, such as the ID.7 Tourer from Volkswagen, and of course on the AutoEV channel as a whole. Am I being a little bit harsh when I say that apart from maybe the ID buzz, Volkswagen's ID products up until now have been a little bit, well, they've just been a bit middle of the road, haven't they? They've not been really anything particularly special. There's always been a better option in the class, and in some respects, better options from within the Volkswagen group itself. The ID.3, it's a decent enough little family hatchback, don't get me wrong, but the Cupra Born I think is a better car. The same with the ID.4 and the ID.5, sort of like medium-sized crossovers we're talking about. I think the Enyaq from Skoda is a better car. But with the ID.7, well, they've sort of got that to themselves within their own group, if you like, because none of the others within the Volkswagen group make this medium-sized sort of like saloon car to take on the likes of the Tesla Model 3, the BMW i4, you know, Polestar 2, things like that. And of course, now they've added a healthy dose of practicality and made themselves stand apart even further by offering really the only sort of estate car in that sector of the market so far. And it's this, the ID.7 Tourer. Now, when I drove the ID.7 Saloon, it's fair to say I actually quite liked it. It's a decent enough steer. But does adding that practicality make a good car a really great one? Well, time to stick it through the actual road test that car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric car, which is the AutoEV one, of course, and find out. But before we get to that, let's take a little snapshot and remind ourselves about the Volkswagen ID.7. So the ID.7 Tourer is the more practical estate version of the Volkswagen ID.7. Two battery sizes are available, the Pro with a 77 kWh battery, capable of delivering up to 373 miles on the WLTP cycle, or this, the Pro S, with a larger 86 kWh battery, and that can see the car travel up to 424 miles on the WLTP cycle. A dual motor GTX model is also available with the larger battery, and that is capable of up to 358 miles. This single motor car has a rear mounted motor delivering a power output of 286 PS. And prices start at just over £52,000 and go up to just under £63,000 before options are fitted here in the UK. So not exactly cheap, but you do get an awful lot of car for your money with the ID.7. And now with the Tourer, there's even more of it. Question is it worth it? Time to find out. Now, as always, we're going to start with styling. Now, of course, we've road tested the ID.7 before when it was launched in the UK last year. So not really a lot has changed when it comes to the front of the car. Now, it's not exactly a style icon, is it? But then Volkswagens never really have been. Well, in some respects, I suppose you could maybe say things like, you know, the original Type 2, and now, of course, the ID Buzz. That's the car that's attributed sort of like with the style side of Volkswagen. The ID3, the ID4, the ID5, the ID7, they're just sensible, get on with the job style of family cars. But in fairness, of all of the ID cars, I think the 7's quite a handsome thing. I quite like it. There's a lot of aero work going on here, and that helps the car get a really good range, which we'll talk about in the usability section, as well as obviously a big battery. But you know, the aero work on the car has helped an awful lot when it comes to getting a lot of miles out of a charge on this car. But the way that it looks, I think, is a nice looking car. It is very much tied in with the rest of the ID cars that you get from Volkswagen. Of course, you get your light bar that runs across the front of the car, and the Volkswagen badge, which illuminates now, because you can have these illuminated by law, and it's the same at the rear, and it gives the car a really distinctive face. You've got their IQ lights, as they call them here, these matrix LEDs, which are phenomenally good at night. I mean, I've been using the car this week around about locally and around the country lanes in the village where I live. These are great lights, so brilliant work there, Volkswagen. But it's quite handsome. You know, it's not going to set your pulse racing, but there's just something quite classy about it. Does that make sense? Am I being a bit daft with that? I just like the way the car looks. If you've had a Passat, you know, a Passat estate, and you're thinking of going electric, you're not going to be shocked by this, are you? You're going to think this is quite normal kind of stuff, really. Cooling's all down at the bottom, so you get this nice smoothed over front end here, you know, this lovely like nose that just drops down, and all the cooling's done down at the bottom there. Now, of course, you've got your radar guided cruise control sensor there. There's a quite neatly embedded little camera at the front there. You know, there's sort of like a little bit more aero work around the side. You can see there's air channeled either side of the front splitter here that takes airflow around and then down the side of the car. Nice tight lines, neat. As I say, not exactly exciting, but then it's Volkswagen. What do you expect? I think it's a handsome thing. Now, I have to say, I prefer the look of the Tourer to the standard ID.7 saloon. Well, fastback, hatchback, whatever you want to call it, because I just think here is better balance, better proportion having the estate car body. I think this really works on this car. Now, it's just a smidgen longer than a Passat estate, and of course, if you're looking at Passat, then they only do that as an estate car in the UK now. You can't get a saloon version of the Passat. So if you're thinking of Passat estate but thinking of going electric, then of course this is what you're going to be looking at, and it's a very similar size to that Passat estate, which, by the way, I have reviewed over on my other channel, House of Cars, if you're interested, the new Passat estate hybrid. Good car, that. Airflow, yes, CD factor 0.25, so they've really got the airflow really well managed around the car. As I say, you've got the air curtains that come in the side, they're taking the airflow around, but there's these little spats just at sort of the front, the leading edge of the, sort of like the wheel arch here, which again just helps with the airflow management. 19-inch wheels are standard. You can go up to 20s. I probably wouldn't, personally. I think these 19s give a really good ride quality. We'll talk about that when we're driving the car, obviously. You get the nice sort of like big standout door mirrors, which have the neat little cameras embedded in them. A lot of tech on the car, as you'd expect from Volkswagen, so that's there. This lovely crease, it's difficult to see in a black car, but I do like it in black. But a really nice sharp crease runs right along the doors and then all the way to the back and just wraps around it. So it's got a real nice definition to this sort of like panel work here. And then this nice sculpting down at the bottom, again difficult to see on the black, but it's a really nice sort of like heavily sculpted sill section. Nothing too silly, nothing too crazy, just really nice enough. Integrated roof rails as well, which is nice. So it means you can add to practicality by putting roof bars and for roof boxes and bike racks and such like. Really neat recessed door handles. Sorry, I've just locked it. But these are, they've just got little touch pads on the back of them, so when you just touch them, they open up, which is really nice. And again, you know, sort of like good wide opening doors to allow easy access and exit out of the car. But these door handles are illuminated at night as well, which is quite nice. Oh, I need to stop doing that, touching the handle, because it locks it. There we go. Privacy glass at the back there. This is nice as well, but you'll see that on the other IDs, like the ID.4 and the ID.5. This sort of like matte silver finish that comes along there and just again helps just reduce the sort of visual bulk of the size of the car. But actually, I don't think it needs it in some respects. It's nice to have it, and I do think it adds something to the style of it, but I really like the look of this car. I think it's a really handsome looking car. It's the same at the back, isn't it? Looks really nice. I think it's really, really neat. I've never liked these stuck-on letters though. You know, these silly plastic letters. I've really never liked them at all. These white letters, they just, I don't know, it just doesn't sit well with me with Volkswagen. But look at the rear light bar, as I show you. If I open this up, look how it lights up. You get this lovely thing there, and of course your VW badge is illuminated now. I like that. That looks really cool. Big airflow management, sorry, big spoiler to aid with the airflow management again. The nice sort of like side spats as well, helps bring airflow right around the back of the car. Tailgate opens down to sort of like bumper level, as you'd expect. Bumper level's just above my knee, so that's not too bad. Reversing camera tucked in there, reflector strip along the bottom, plus parking sensors there, and a rear wash wipe. Nothing particularly controversial here, is there? It's just what we'd expect from a big Volkswagen estate car. But as I say, I really like it. I think it's a handsome looking beast, and as I say, I prefer it to the standard ID.7. And I think I prefer it also to the Passat estate, and I think that's a good looking car. Well, what do you think? Because it doesn't really matter what I think. I'm not buying one. You might be though. What do you think about it? Are you a Volkswagen Passat estate owner? Have you been thinking about going electric? Does this tickle your pickle? Would you buy this car? Or are you going to have to look at either something smaller, like a Peugeot E308, or something bigger, like a BMW i5 Touring, because you just don't like the look of it? Whew, as always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Shall we discuss practicality? Because let's be honest, it's an estate car, and that's why you're going to be interested in it. Well, if you are, then you've nothing to fear. That is 605 litres of space. Now the ID.7 Saloon is a big car anyway, but the estate is even bigger. 605 litres is bigger than you get from something like, say, a Skoda Enyaq. You know, they're obviously medium-sized crossover, which obviously is the sort of like quite a popular car within that medium-sized sector now, and probably one of the most practical, but that's bigger. It's also bigger than you get from Volkswagen's own Passat. It's also bigger than you get in a BMW i5 Touring, which is a class above this car. So this is an immensely practical car. Now I've put the suitcases in here, but as you see, I've only got the 3 of them, but you can see that 4 is going to fit no problem there. So we've got a big one there, medium one there, carry-on there, you'd get another carry-on down the side there, plus you'd get more space at the front. And these aren't all the way to the back. You know, there's still a little bit of space behind them because of the rake of the rear seat. Now, talking of the rear seat, that folds in a 60-40 split if you need extra space. Can't imagine you do, but there you go. If you do need extra space, that will take the total capacity up to 1,948 litres. But it's not just the volume that's quite impressive, it's actually the load bay itself, because from the tailgate to the back of the rear seat, with the rear seats in place, is about 1 metre of length. So in terms of load space carrying, that's what you're looking at. And if you fold those seats down, you then go up to nearly 2 metres of length before you get the seats as they're folded. So this is an incredibly practical car when it comes to stuff like that. There's also some nice little bits in here. I have to take these obviously out to show you them. But if I take these out here, just show you, you've got a little bit of underfloor storage, not much, but you get cables in there, but you could tuck jackets and things underneath there, or umbrellas and stuff, which is quite good. Or you can actually drop the boot floor down a little, so you can take it out and drop the boot floor down a little bit. There's some carrying hooks on the side here, either side, and if you are folding the rear seats down, then it's just a pull of the lever, and then the seat goes completely flat. And it does go flat pretty much. There's a little bit of a ramp up, but that's not bad actually. The other thing I like about it, and again, this is something I'm going to talk about a lot in terms of Volkswagen, they're sort of starting to find their quality mojo again, because things like this Look at that, it's just nicely damped and it goes back to one position, then you touch it again and then it folds away completely. I really like that. So yeah, good amount of space, very practical. What more do you want? Now if you thought they maybe sacrificed space in the back for the rear passengers for boot space, think again, because this is huge back here, absolutely huge. That's my driving position and I'm 5'8". Look at the amount of space that I have, it's massive. It feels like the driver's seat's in a different postal district. The other thing I'll say about the rear seats of the car, you sit quite high. It's almost like that stadium style seating, so you do get a good view forward, you don't feel too enclosed in here. But I've also got reasonable headroom. Now again, I will say this, if you're closer to the 6 foot mark, the roof is just starting to drop at this point, so you might find that is just going to start encroaching on you, especially if you've got a thing for wearing tall hats, then you might find that. But in most scenarios, this is perfect in terms of its rear seat accommodation. And because you sit that little bit higher, you don't feel that your legs are pushed up. You know, you feel like you've got enough drop, if you like, you know, for your legs. I can just probably get my feet underneath the seat in front of me if I needed to, if I could actually reach the seat in front of me. And remember, I like my seat quite low down, so there's certainly got enough space. I had my daughter and a friend in the back of the car last week, and her friend was saying she couldn't believe how far away that seat felt from her. You know, and her dad drives a Qashqai, so that gives you sort of like an idea of sort of like the space that you've got back here. Right, you've got storage, so you've got two little pockets at the tops of the seats there, plus another lower pocket there, so for mobiles, Polo Mints, Frutellas, they can go up in there, you know, iPads, Kindles down in there. If they do have them, then there's two USB-C charging ports. This particular car, I'll go through options and stuff in the pricing section, but this particular car has the heated rear seats as well. You can get a panoramic sunroof, it's not in this car. Not sure I'd want it, just as I say, if you've got taller passengers. There you go. Door bins at the back, they're nice and they're lined with carpet. Well done, Volkswagen. And you'll certainly get water bottle in there as well. Fold down armrest, two cup holders in there. So again, nice storage. Isofix points. Yes, behind plastic covers. Thank you, Volkswagen. That's brilliant. You're so much better than these silly zips that Stellantis do. And the rear seats themselves are quite nicely sculpted, so the comfort that you get is excellent. You know, they really hold you well. There's enough support along the legs, there's enough support down the back. Maybe the downside is if you have an adult in the centre, then there's maybe, because of the seat, as you can see, is slightly more heavily sculpted for the outer passengers. But there's a flat floor across, so they've got plenty of leg room and foot room. And of course, because there is such a space between the front of this rear seat and the back of this front console, there's enough space for their feet in here. So in terms of rear seat space as a family car, what more do you need? Right. The interior of the ID.7 Tourer, well, of course, it's the same as the ID.7 that we tested back last year. Now, I want to talk a lot about the interior of this car because there's a couple of things about it. First of all, you get in it, you go, oh, right, okay, it's a bit basic in here, isn't it? It isn't, it's not. And in some respects, there's a lot of improvements going on with Volkswagen since they first started down the route of this sort of very minimalist interior with the big screen and the, you know, sort of like the ID range, the ID3 that started it all. And there was a lot of criticism, especially in terms of the software. They have improved it immensely from when those first cars came out. I think it's like the 4th generation of software that's in it now. And it's actually very good. I'm struggling to really criticise it for a lot of things. So it's not perfect, but very few cars are now, in fairness. You can always nitpick at certain things, and there are certain things I will still nitpick at. But in fairness, this is a world away from what we had from Volkswagen when they first started with this. So, everything's pretty much controlled through here. You can see there's a real lack of physical buttons in the car. There's still these infernal touch-sensitive controls. Now, I've had a couple of comments recently, I was looking, oh, they're not that bad. They are. They're awful. They still are. I turned the heated steering wheel on the other day by going round a roundabout. I brushed my hand against it and it flipped on the heated steering wheel. So, which is there, which is a silly place to put it. You know, why is that up there? Why is it not in there? However, in fairness, as I say, there are a lot of things to like about the interior of the car. Let me start with the screen, okay? The first thing that I will say about it is it's fairly quick now. You know, it's again, he says that as it lags. It hasn't done that an awful lot with me. And there's a lot you can see around here. So, you know, sort of like, you know, this is your kind of vehicle status screen. You can see there's some of the data. So your average consumption, if there's a phone connected, your Bluetooth there, you know, your radio, such like as that. And then down at the bottom is the climate menu. Okay, so if we go into the climate menu, it brings up this, and you know, you can have it in economy mode where it's just the driver, and I think there's also a smart, yeah, here you go, here with this thing, you know, just cool your feet, warm your feet, so you can really tailor it how you want it. But my daughter was quite impressed with this the other night. She was like, oh, why is this so here? And I said, well, you can vary the airflow how you want it. She said, that's pretty decent. You know, she was quite impressed with how you could do that and get the airflow going exactly how you want it. Now, obviously, it's still a bit more laborious than having a little toggle switch on a vent. I get that, you know, but actually, once you start using it, it's all right, in fairness. There's also some shortcut buttons along the top here. So, for instance, you go to your driving modes, there. You want to go to your driving assist modes, you know, there. You want to go to the parking, the ignition's not on at the moment, but you know, you want to go into sort of like various different things there along the top. So there are some fairly quick shortcut buttons to the things that you will need fairly quick access to. Also as well, if you're wanting just to adjust the temperature, then obviously it's still these slider controls, but these are now illuminated at night, and then the volume's the same. So you can turn the volume up and down with that middle one there, or going on the steering wheel as well, which is, I don't like those. But actually, I'm not going to really sit here and criticise it because it's a lot better. It's quite clear to see as well. You know, the font they use, the colours they use, they're a lot better. You know, there's just like that centre home button there that takes you straight back to where you want to be. The inbuilt nav, it's got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You know, this particular car's got the heated and ventilated seats, heated and cooled seats. And again, you know, you can adjust them fairly quickly just with a touching of the screen there. You can also set it with the Volkswagen voice activation, hello, I'm Ida. So if you go hello ID, set temperature to 20 degrees or to 23 degrees, it does it. So you can set it using your voice as well. You can turn the heated seats on and off with your voice, okay? So things like that, and I can't really criticise that. So I have to say, it's a lot better than it was when it first came out on the ID.3s, and they have improved it. So well done, Volkswagen. There is a little bit of an issue I have with it in some respects, because when you get in the ID cars now, you don't switch the car on. So if you jump into the car and you sit in the seat, it switches the car on. But when you touch the brake, see? So for instance, now the car is now on. And if I'm going to go on a journey and I go, oh, right, I need to turn off my assistance systems here. So I want to turn off my lane keep assist and I want to turn off my speed warning, okay? So there's your shortcut there, you turn them off, all right? Nice and straightforward, yeah? Oh, hang on a minute, I forgot something. I've left the rear boot open, or I need to take my jacket off. When you get out the car, it switches itself off. So when you get back in it, it switches itself back on. They've defaulted back on. That's the only thing. It's not the end of the world, but do you know what I mean? It's just a bit silly. You know, so by not switching the car on and off, by doing it automatically, that's a bit infuriating. But the flip side of that, what I will say is, the two things that I really dislike, which is the lane keep assist and the speed limit warning, they're not that intrusive. Of all the cars I've reviewed, I have to say, they're probably the least intrusive warnings that I've had in a car. You get a tiny little chime. I think it does it 3 times if you go above the speed limit. And with the lane keep assist, I was going down, I took the car for a long drive yesterday, going down the motorway, and you start to kind of wander about your lane. It's a very, very gentle. You can just feel it, just slightly tug at the wheel. It's not the aggressive sort of thing you get, or big warning buzzers. And you get a little line on your augmented head-up display as well that tells you you're wandering into the other lane. That's it. In fact, I drove pretty much all of yesterday without turning them off. They're not that intrusive. So anyway, that's probably the only thing I would say I find a little bit silly, that you've got that thing that where you jump in the car. And Volkswagen aren't the only ones that do it, you know. But yeah, if you forget to take your jacket off, or you need to throw something in the back, as soon as you get back out, it switches the car off and they all default back on again. Right, that's it. That's the only thing I want to criticise it for. The driver's display, which is this little screen that's embedded into the dashboard here, has got all the right information you want. So you get your speed, you've got to see whether your outside temperature, you've got your percentage of battery, your range, distance to go. That's quite decent. You've got a head-up display, which has augmented reality, as I say, as well. And the same with the sat-nav, which is excellent. It's really very good. But as I say, it's wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so you might end up defaulting to Waze anyway. You've got the touchpad over here by your right knee for the lights, and as I say, they're excellent at night. They are superb, these matrix LED lights with the automatic high beam assist and things. Superb, really good. The only thing I would say is they've moved they haven't moved it. It's always this on the ID.7, but the gear shift is this column stalk here. So you twist it. Remember on the ID.3 you had the one like the BMW i3, the twist column on top of the screen up here. It's a column stalk, so all your lights and all your wipers are on the one stalk over here. That just takes a bit of learning. So for instance, pulling it back towards you doesn't wash the screen. It's flashing the lights. You've got to push it to wash the screen. Then the rear wiper is this little toggle on the top, and then the front wipers are the toggle that's on the side. So there's a lot to learn about that one column stalk. Okay, but it works well, and it's fine. The seats are superb. Seats are beautifully comfortable. A lot of support down the side. You do have an adjustable length of squab. These are optional seats because these have got massage function on them as well, but even the standard seats are brilliant. They've got enough lateral support, they've got a nice shoulder support. The driving position's really good, and it's a nice big wheel. Actually, it's one of the nicest steering wheels that I've had in a car in a while. I thought at first it was a bit big, but actually because the car is big, it doesn't feel overtly large. And you know, you get a nice, when you're a wheel shuffler, you get a really nice sort of like grip of the wheel, and it's really good. And of course you can adjust it for reach and for rake. The quality, right, got to talk about the quality, because the quality is the best we've had from Volkswagen for a long time. They are getting back on track. The materials used feel really, really good. So that, you know, okay, we're not back at sort of like the Mark II Golf, you know, situation where the big switches, the light switches up here, they just properly clicked and things like that. But I've got to say, the dash itself, the top of the door, the controls that you do tend to use, you know, the column stalks, the twisted transmission lever, everything feels very, very solid. And the use of the nice materials in the car is really excellent. This sort of padded, sort of like almost vinyl-like along here with the pinstripe through it. You've got really nice, this microfiber suede insert in the seat, again with a sort of leatherette down the side. Even the lower plastics, I can't really fault them. You know, sort of like down here, in this panel down here, the glove box lid feels like a bank vault. That's quite heavy to actually close that. That feels superb. And again, the door bins in the front are lined with carpet as well. So they're really getting their act together with quality again. So again, kudos to you, Volkswagen. Oh, and you also get, I don't know if I'll be able to do it if I switch the lights on. Hang on, if I switch the lights on now. Don't know if you can see it, but the interior lighting, the ambient lighting, when the lights are on, is really nice. This kind of sort of like strip of veneer that goes through the car, and you get this nice sort of like a glow from it, this blue sort of like hatch glow. Really, really nice place to sit at night. It feels excellent, and that comes on with the automatic lights. So yeah, I can't really complain about that. And this one's got optional Harman Kardon audio system, which is good as well. Storage is good. You've got this centre section here. Now let me just take these out, which you can cover up, because you've got wireless charging there, plus connectivity. And then you can just cover that up for security, which is nice. Or open up one section and have the rest of it covered. 2 cup holders. It does fit my big Yeti flask as well. I had that in the car yesterday, I just don't have it today. That smaller one does fit in, because they've got rubber grips on them. They really grip them, so they don't rattle around either. So that's good. Little bit down the side there. For this centre box, I can get my whole arm in this. Let me move that thing there. I can get my literally up to my armpit in this centre cubby. That's huge. And there's a storage tray underneath this transmission, well, not transmission, but the centre spar. There's another storage tray down there, which is also lined with rubber, so things don't rattle around. So, in fairness, there isn't an awful lot to criticise about the interior. Yes, at first glance, it looks really plain. There's no real physical buttons in it. But that's so much better now that that's actually quite nice to use. There's still my usual bugbear. I don't care what anybody says. You've still only got 2 electric window switches. You've got to press a button to get the rear ones open. And it says, how often do you open the rear windows? You'd be surprised how often you open the rear windows. And I find that a pain. Who was complaining about having 4 electric window switches? Who was complaining about it? I don't understand that. And I don't particularly like the way it feels like one of those Parma Violet sweeties to adjust the wing mirrors. But that's the only thing I can really criticise the interior for. Oh, and the thing you get in and out and it switches everything back on. Other than that, this is probably the best ID interior that Volkswagen have done. And it is getting back up to what we expect from the brand of Volkswagen in terms of its quality. So actually, I really like it. Batteries. Charge up from here. Interesting, the flap goes up. Quite interesting, I think. 2 batteries, okay, same as the Saloon has. So you get the Pro, which is a 77 kilowatt hour battery, and that should give you 373 miles of range, which is excellent, okay, really very good. However, you can go to the Pro S, which this car is, and that jumps up in battery size to an 86 kilowatt hour battery, okay, and the Volkswagen say that should give it a WLTP range of 424 miles. Now, I was talking earlier about the aerodynamics. Now we're playing a part in that, helping it get a good range. I have to say, I've not seen 400 miles out of this car this week, but I have seen close to 300 miles. And considering that we're hovering around about the freezing mark at the moment, round about where I live, I charged it to just under 100% last night, and it was showing 300 miles. So I would think in slightly milder weather, you're probably going to be looking at, from this big battery, 330 to 350 miles on an average of running around. So that's not bad considering it's a big, heavy estate car. I think that's good. Now, let's talk about charging. Oh, sorry, should mention as well, if you go for the GTX model, which is the dual motor performance version, if you like, that has the largest battery, the large battery like this car has, but it has the lowest range at 358 miles, okay? So just be aware of that. Charging speed, 200 kilowatts on the bigger battery, 10 to 80% charge in 26 minutes, okay? So that's good as well. If you go for the smaller battery, the charging speed only drops down to 175 kilowatts. So given the fact that there's a difference in the size of battery, your charging time of that 10 to 80% should be around about the same, no more than half an hour. Okay, so again, that's excellent. Flat to full. Now, bearing in mind it's a big old battery this, so if you're charging from a 7 kilowatt wall box, it's just under 14 hours, okay? You can drop that, however, down to 9 hours because the car has an 11 kilowatt onboard charger. So if you've got the faster wall box, thanks to 3-phase electricity, you can drop that flat to full time down to around about 9 hours. However, disappointingly, a heat pump is an option on what is already quite an expensive car. Right, let's get this up on the road and see what we think about this when it comes to its performance and handling. Right, well, let's get the raw numbers out of the way first, shall we? 282 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds. Plenty fast enough, I think, for this style of car, would you not say? If you do want to go faster, obviously there's dual motor GTX, which will, is more powerful and will be a lot faster. But the one word I will not use to describe the ID.7 Tourer is dynamic. And that's a good thing. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now, I know that the BMW i4 is a sharper driver's tool. I know that the Tesla Model 3 is faster than this. And we can talk about, design language when it comes to the Polestar 2 and, of course, the Hyundai Ioniq 6 and all its tech and all the rest of it. And if we were including even some of those medium-sized crossover SUVs that we discussed at the beginning, the Skoda Enyaq, Volkswagen's own ID.4, one of those. Not one of those cars, not one of them, is as comfortable as this. And that, to me, is exactly what this car is all about. What Volkswagen have done here is they've looked at it and gone, you know what? This is a big old Herbert of a car we've built here. You know, it's well over 2 tons, this car. There is no point in trying to make it feel sporty or dynamic, because it isn't going to be. Why are people going to buy it? Well, they're going to buy it because they want a big, comfortable family car. And that's exactly what Volkswagen have built, and it's all the better for it. This is a blissfully comfortable car to drive. Yesterday, I had only driven this car over sort of like little short distances in my time with it this week, and I really felt I wanted to take it for a long drive. So I cleared my diary and I went from my house in Surrey around the M25 to I went down the M23 past Gatwick, down to Horsham, through into West Sussex and back up. And there's not one scenario that I came across yesterday, the motorway, the back roads, little towns and villages and stuff, where this car was not comfortable to drive. I love this thing for a long distance. As a family, you know, we're in Scotland quite a lot because obviously I've got family up there. We're in Cornwall every Easter for 2 weeks. In the summer we go across to the west coast of France. Because we've got the dog, I don't take the ferry, I take the Eurotunnel. So I've got to drive from Calais to the west coast of France, which is a fair old schlep, let me tell you. This is the car I want to do it in, because I know that my daughter will fall asleep comfortably in the back because it's so quiet and the ride quality is as good as it is, and the dog won't feel sick. And what else do you want a big family estate car to do? And it'll get all the luggage in the back. You know, if I need to stick a roof box on it, you can. Yes, I know, you know, it's not a cheap car, which obviously we'll get on to talk about. But God, it's a good one. It really is. Now, you're going to want to know why I'm saying all this, so I have to talk about its dynamic capabilities. So let me start. Right, the suspension. It has obviously the different driving modes you can go into. So you've got Eco, Comfort. Comfort's the default one. Eco, Comfort and Sport, okay? Stick with it in Comfort. Don't bother with Eco, and certainly don't bother with Sport. Now, Sport is interesting because when you go into Sport mode in most cars, I'm going to the mode up here. I go into Sport mode. What it tends to do is it sharpens everything up, so the throttle's much more responsive, and you know, you stamp on it and the world explodes. It doesn't with this car. Actually, it weights everything up. So you've actually got to be quite deliberate with the throttle to make it go faster. Yeah? And it weights the steering up as well. It's fine, it's not a problem, but it's making you drive it. Volkswagen have said, hang on a second, we need to make people drive the car if it's in sport mode. So you need to do a little bit more as a driver. You need to get involved with it more. So that's a good thing. The downside is, as I say, you can't disguise the weight and the size of the car. The physical size of the car can't be disguised, I'm afraid. And that's where it just, I'm not saying it falls apart, but it just gets a bit, it's like putting me in a pair of running shoes, yeah? I can do it, I just don't want to. And actually, I'm just going to make an absolute arse of myself if I did. You know, so there's no point. And that to me is the ID.7 in sport mode. There's no point. Stick with it in comfort. The individual mode, however, I think is an interesting one, because if you go into that, you can set it up how you want it. But here, there's 15 settings between comfort and sport that you can choose. Who's got the time for that? I mean, sorry, it's a width restriction. Who's got the time for all of that malarkey? Now, in fairness, this car has dynamic chassis control, which is an option. So, you know, you don't get that sort of like on this sort of like the standard car. But even so, you don't faff around with that. Leave it in comfort mode and just let it do its thing. Eco obviously does what Eco does, you know, it dulls everything down and makes you just, well, drive really slow. So I'm not going to bother even talking about that. Comfort is where this car excels at. And what you have is a suspension system that just seems to, it's really well judged. And that's what I was talking about earlier as well with the wheels. Don't bother optioning up the bigger wheels on the car. These 19s, you know, the Continental Tours that are on the car as standard, they've got quite a big sidewall on them, and they really help just soak up the bumps, you know, and keep sort of like all the harshness of the surface away from you when you're inside the car. This is, to me, the ideal scenario for this car. It's got a really, really nice chassis setup in the standard comfort mode. I really like it. Don't get me wrong, it's not floaty like a Citroen or something. You know, you do feel what's happening underneath. There is enough communication. You know if there's a drain hole cover there. And so what I mean is, it's not harsh. It doesn't jolt the car and make you feel uncomfortable. And as I say, you want your kids to fall asleep in the back while you're driving, you know, sort of like through France or whatever, then, you know, it's going to do that. And that's really perfect for that. The only flip side in terms of the driver controls I'll talk about is that you've got to watch is the brakes, okay? Now, the brakes themselves are really good, but a bit like I was saying in the sport mode, where you've got to be quite, weights everything up, you've got to be quite deliberate with it. It's the same with the brake pedal in the standard mode. When you touch it, it needs a nice firm push to make the car stop. It's not dead, you know, it's not like the Stellantis ones that are kind of spongy at the top and then they bite. It means that there's quite a lot of travel in the actual pedal itself. It's making you do it. So again, if you're that style like me, where you like to drive the car, that's quite nice. But it takes a bit of getting used to when you've driven other cars that are quite sharp on their brakes. And talking of which, there is the brake regen. There's only one level of brake regen, so you're either in drive or you're in brake B mode, I suppose. It will bring the car up to a very slow creep, but it takes its time. It's not that aggressive. So you've really got to, if you're one of these people that like a lot of adjustability in your brake regen modes, you don't get it with this car. It's either on or it's off. Not an issue for me. I prefer it off altogether. But if you like one pedal driving, you might want to maybe be looking elsewhere, okay? But that's it. That's the only really things I can actually find fault with on this car. Because it just, you know, they've just done it right. That's exactly what they've looked at it and gone, it's just a big family estate car. It just needs to be comfortable and spacious and quiet inside and comfortable. And that's exactly what it is. It doesn't have to be fast, doesn't need to set lap records. And of course, with the big battery and the efficiency that you get out of the car, you know, it means you are actually travelling good long distances between having to stop. This would be a perfect car for a family holiday. It really would be. You know, it's taken Volkswagen a little time to get an ID product really right, but I do think they've done it with ID.7, and especially with the Tourer, because to me it just nails its design brief. It just does it. You know, the interior's comfortable, the seats are lovely, the good visibility out of it. This is a lot easier to use than it has been. Plus there's the voice activation if you want to use it. So yeah, you know, I get, you know, we're all saying you should go back to physical buttons, and there isn't really any of them in here at all. But that's so easy to use now and actually relatively slick that is it much of a problem? I don't think it is. It's quiet. It's comfortable, it's fast enough, it's spacious. It's expensive, as we'll find out, but it's Volkswagen's best electric car to date. It really is. I really like this car. I really like it. What a great family car. Now, if there is an elephant in the room, let's discuss it now, because it's its price, okay? It's not a cheap car, the new ID.7 Tourer, okay? So you start off with the Pro Match with the 77 kilowatt hour battery, and that's £52,270 before options, okay? This car, which is a Pro S Match, which is the bigger battery, that's £56,170, okay? So another £4,000 for the bigger battery. But with the options fitted to this car, and it's not got a massive load of them in fairness, this car here as tested is £59,140. So a smidgen under 60 grand for a medium-sized electric estate car. Now, on the face of it, that is expensive, okay? £60,000 for a family estate is a lot of money, I get that. However, think about this, just if we can balance it out a little bit. A BMW i5 Touring, which admittedly is from the class above, but in fairness, as we've also seen, this car has more space in the back of it. That starts at just under £70,000 before you add any options onto it for the eDrive 40, okay? So just as a bit of context, think about it like that. However, on the other side of it, and being fair to you guys, a Volkswagen ID.4 or a Skoda Enyaq, the medium-sized crossover SUVs, which sort of killed off this size of car, they are an awful lot less expensive. It is a lot of money for a family estate car, I will give you that. Right, let's think about the competition for the car. Because whilst I said the estate car is sort of coming back, especially when it comes to electric cars, there's still not really anything that really directly competes with the ID.7 Tourer, because you've either got to go smaller and have something like an MG5, an Astra, Vauxhall Astra Sports Tourer, or a Peugeot E308 SW, or you go bigger for a BMW i5 Touring, and of course then you've got to pay more money. And of course, as I said, Audi are coming back on the scene soon with the A6 Avant e-tron, but that's going to compete with the i5. So this sort of does sit in a class on its own in some respects, because you don't have that medium-sized estate car from its rivals. You know, you don't get a BMW i4 Touring, for instance, or a Tesla Model 3 estate, or a Polestar 2 estate, or a Hyundai Ioniq 6 station wagon, or whatever we want to call it. So in some respects, it does sort of sit out on its own. So therefore, you're maybe going to compare it to those medium-sized crossovers that we've spoken about right at the start, and I've just mentioned there. So of course, things such as the Volkswagen ID.4, the Skoda Enyaq, maybe the Toyota BZ4X, Subaru Solterra, those style of cars. But if you're hell-bent on an estate car, and you're thinking about going electric, then maybe, as I say, if you need this size, you don't want to spend any more money, then of course your only other option really then is to look at a combustion engine car, but maybe a hybrid. And the competition then comes from Volkswagen itself with the new Passat estate, which you can get in e-hybrid mode. And in fairness, it's not an awful lot cheaper than this. So that's really it when it comes to the competition. So here's what we like and also what we don't like about Volkswagen's ID.7 Tourer. Well, it's a relatively handsome car. It's refined and quiet. Its interior is much better than the other ID cars that we've seen from Volkswagen. It's built for comfort and not speed, and we think that's a good thing. And it is incredibly practical. We don't like, well, whilst better than the other ID products, the interior still isn't perfect, and we would like to see more physical switchgear in the car. It's a heavy car, and it can feel it in certain circumstances. Its warranty should be better to gain customer confidence in the brand. And of course, there is a high price to pay for it. If we remove the ID buzz from the equation, because the ID buzz will always make you smile, well, unless of course you're dead inside, then there's no doubt in my mind that the ID.7 has been Volkswagen's best ID product to date. And the reason I think that it's its best product to date is simple. They've not tried to make it into something that it can't be. In other words, it's not sporty or dynamic, and they've not tried to make it that way. What it was just a big, sensible family car. And now they've made it even better by giving us an estate version. I think it's better looking, it's a lot more practical. Yes, of course, there is a price to pay for it. I get that, it's not a cheap car. But if you're really, really sick of SUVs and crossovers, and you just want a pretty sensible, comfortable, practical family car, then Volkswagen really have delivered the goods with the new ID.7 Tourer. Thank you for watching another road test review on AutoEV. As always, please make sure you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way you'll be notified when our next video is uploaded and it's gone live. If you have enjoyed this week's review, then make sure you give it a little thumbs up, and of course don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think of the Volkswagen ID.7 Tourer? Would it tempt you out of your Passat estate? Too expensive? Would you rather go for a crossover like an ID.4 or a Skoda Enyaq? Or are you going to wait till they come down in price for a second-hand one? Would you buy this instead of a BMW i5 Touring? Questionnaire for you. As always, let me know down in the comment section down below. Now remember, we're across all social media platforms, so if you're a bit of a sort of like an Instagram fan, or you're a TikToker, or you're into your X or LinkedIn or Facebook even, then of course give us a follow there as well, because that certainly does help the channel. Now maybe you're thinking about buying an electric car, but it might not be a new Volkswagen ID.7 Tourer. Maybe you're thinking about, oh, I quite fancy an electric estate car, but my budget's only this. How do you find out what maybe something like an MG5 is like? Well, I'll tell you how. Stay on the AutoEV homepage on the YouTube channel. Just at the top there's a little magnifying glass, and if you type the name of the car that you're interested in buying there, then if it's been a new electric car in the last 5 years we've had the channel on the go, then of course we've subjected it to the actual road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric car. And that, folks, is the AutoEV one. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. I'll see you again soon.